I've been looking forward to Kingpin Reloaded for years now, and over the last couple of weeks I've been playing the original version and recording a bunch of footage in anticipation for the release of Reloaded. I wish I could tell you that the visuals were greatly improved on the original game, but unfortunately that's just not the case. There are some gameplay upgrades in Reloaded. For example, just using WASD to move is a huge improvement in my opinion. It is easier to talk to people now. Some of the menus have been improved and there are prompts on screen telling you what to do. But in this video, I'm not really going to be focusing on the gameplay, I'm just purely focusing on the visuals. This is a graphical comparison. So let's get right into it and we'll start off with the opening cutscene. I'm first going to just play the Reloaded cutscene in its entirety, then we'll play the original and then I'll compare the two. The first thing you may notice is the lights are very bright, they're almost blinding. And it makes the models a little bit darker because we have real-time lighting and shadows now. So in the original version you can see that it's not quite as, the lights aren't just as glaring, but the models are a little bit more evenly lit, and that's just kind of a feature of old games. They didn't have real-time lighting, but they had, I think, a more even lighting on their surfaces, which I actually prefer in some ways. So now let's compare both trailers sort of side by side. I'll sort of slide the two footages across each other. So yeah, you can see, in my opinion, in this case, the original I actually prefer the original. The new version's just, the lights are too bright and the models are far too dark and you can't really see any of the detail because of that. So let's get into the actual game now. This is the first alleyway in the game and you can see that things have been smoothed out. The textures are smoother, but that's not necessarily saying that that means they're better. One of the devs that are working on it in Discord said that there is no AI upscaling used, but to me it just feels like they've just taken the textures and just kind of AI upscaled them or ran them through some sort of thing that just softens all out, and I'm not sure I actually like this effect. This is one of the first main streets in the game and you can see that the bloom on the neon signs is crazy, just a bit like the lighting in the other parts of the game. This can be turned off in the menus, so I'll show you guys what that looks like. You can see here that if we go to options, video, and then the enhancements, we can just turn off bloom. And the signs are a little bit better, but some of the lights are still, I think, too bright in comparison to the original game. You will notice the soundtrack playing in the original. The Reloaded version, for some parts of the game it just doesn't play the soundtrack, and I think this is to fix a bug in the soundtrack, but I think it's a lazy fix, to be honest, to just completely turn it off. I would have preferred if they worked on that a little bit more and just fixed the audio bug there. So a little bit of a close-up here. Again, signage in some ways I think looks better in the original version. I think some more detail has been put into the Reloaded version, but in some ways the actual letter and things like that are just slightly easier to read in the original version, I think is what I like about it more. But also the signage can feel a little bit washed out in the Reloaded version too. So in scenes like this, I actually prefer the original even though it's slightly lower resolution. So here are a few of the first enemies in the game. This alleyway again looks quite dark in the newer version because of the new lighting system. The textures may be slightly better quality in this area, especially on the wall, but you don't really get to see the textures because it's so dark. So this next section I'm highlighting here is an example of something else I noticed is kind of broken in the game. There's a security guard at this section. He runs over and listens to the radio. But for some reason in the Reloaded version, he just kind of stands at the wall and just like doesn't really go up the ramp the way he should. This section broke on me a couple of times where he just like stares at the wall and then all of a sudden comes back to life and just like mows you down like really quickly. It just feels kind of glitchy for some reason. So this is how this should play out in the original game. The security guard runs over to the radio, he runs up the ramp, and then you see the two of them stand side by side with their back to you, and that gives you enough time to sneak in one of the doorways. This is another example from the reloaded version. Something's really weird about the guy's torch as well. I just don't like the way it like fills the whole alleyway like that. I can see what they tried to do there with the torch, but again, the original torch is better. So this is another example of, you can see his torch is kind of glitching out a little bit there. But again, he's just kind of standing, not really at the radio. He's just glitched over at the wall for some reason. So something needs to be fixed there with the reloaded version. Again, you can just see them going crazy, which does happen in the original game, but it just feels a little bit glitchy here for some reason. So a little further on in the game now, we're outside Jack's bar. Again, the original to me just feels more evenly lit. Parts of this can be quite dark. You can see the large poster on the wall there. It's probably one of the better things that have been upscaled texture-wise. And again, it to me feels like it has been sort of AI upscaled. I can imagine this just being fed into an AI upscaler. It looks very, very similar. There may be some hand texturing going on here, but it's one of the few examples I think that it really works, the new textures. Again, inside the bar now, the lighting again, I think in the original looks better. That it's kind of like an orb light going on that's just really too bright. We can actually flick between the graphics. Actually in this, I'm going to turn off the actual bloom, but you can see it doesn't actually have a huge effect. You can switch between the graphics while playing by pressing the number 9 on the keypad. So this is the in-game switching between the textures. But if I actually show you my original footage, you'll see that it looks better in the original compared to using the original textures in the reloaded version. So this is just a new angle of the bar. Again, I would be hard pressed to tell you which is the reloaded and which is the original. It looks very similar. The telltale giveaway for the reloaded version is just that it's a little bit darker. Here's a close-up of some of the thugs in the bar. Again, it's just a little bit brighter in the original. Things look a little bit darker in the reloaded version. I was hoping the things on the table would like stand out a little bit more, maybe not look so angular, maybe higher res versions of the playing cards and things like that. But unfortunately, I think because they didn't have the source code for this game, maybe things like the models couldn't be updated just as much as they would have liked and as much as I would have liked. Finally, just showing you one of the signs. Again, I think the reloaded version just looks a little bit washed out compared to the original. So here's our next cutscene in this poker room. I do like how the objects flash now to let you know that you can pick them up in the reloaded version, but overall I again prefer the original here. This is actually the texture on the table looks quite nice in the original version. Things have been smoothed out a little bit. That wood grain texture behind that character does look quite nice. But the room overall is probably just a little bit darker than the original. So I don't see a huge improvement here. This is another example of a room that I find it hard to believe the textures haven't just been AI upscaled or like smoothed out in some way. The floor texture looks identical. The reloaded version just looks slightly smoother. I can't see that being something that was handcrafted. Here's another room, which is a great example of how the lighting in the new version just doesn't work. It's the little desk lamp is insanely bright. It's just far too intense, and this is actually with the bloom turned off. I think there's just problems with some of the lighting that just needs to be like scaled down. So they probably just need to go in and touch these up, especially if you walk over to it or look directly at it. It just like blinds your whole screen pretty much. So yeah, there's problems I think with lighting that just need to be addressed and hopefully update it. But yeah, that's a pretty big issue. Similar to the lighting issue, there is actually an issue with the explosions in the game. I noticed that when I was fighting this mini boss, there's a couple of explosive barrels nearby. I always shoot whenever the boss is nearby, but the explosion itself is absolutely huge, and there's these strange trails coming off it. Now, if I cut to footage of the original game just to show you what those explosions should look like, it's essentially the exact same graphic, if you like, but it's just a much more scaled down version, I think. It's almost like they've just, maybe it's a mistake where they've just taken that explosion and scaled it way up. But this is what these things look like blowing up in the original. But in the reloaded version, the effect is just way over exaggerated, and it just fills the whole screen with little mini explosions. I don't like that effect at all. Hopefully they fix or change that. And finally, this motorbike cutscene, again, is very dark, but it's glitched as well. Like, it's really obvious where the where it's repeating the pattern right there. If I cut to the original, you'll see what I mean. This is what it should look like, a nice smooth transition. I don't know what's happening in the reloaded version. It just seems like it's a repetitive clip or something, or it's like lagging pretty badly. And I almost forgot, there is something really broken about the water effects in this game. I like that they tried to add reflections to the water, but it just didn't work at all. It just kind of doubles up on the model that's standing in the water. And any items or anything like that that's dropped in the water too. I don't know what's going on here, but I appreciate what they tried to do here, but it just didn't work. So I think they need to go back to the drawing board on the reflections in the water. Unfortunately, I'm pretty disappointed overall with Kingpin Reloaded. Visually speaking, gameplay wise, I do think it's a slight improvement actually. Maybe I'll talk more about that in a review or a playthrough if you guys want to see that. So yeah, but this is all I've got for the graphical comparison. I'd like to hear what you guys think. Thanks for watching this video, and please subscribe for the next one.